Hello, dreamer, and welcome to Sleep Stories. My name is Aurora, and I'll be your guide tonight as we gently drift into a soft, magical world, a place where dreams shimmer quietly beneath the earth, and rest is waiting patiently for you. Tonight's story is inspired by Delicious in Dungeon, a place of warm cooking, quiet wonder, and deep underground mysteries. But before we begin, let's take a moment together. Settle in. Let your body grow heavy and your breath slow down. Let your shoulders relax. Unclench your jaw. Rest your hands softly at your sides. Breathe in, nice and deep, and exhale slowly. Again, in, and let it go. You are safe. You are warm. Everything is okay now. This is your time. This is your story. Let's begin. It began in silence. Far below the surface, past glowing fungi forests and stone caverns lined with sleeping creatures, wound a narrow stairwell. It spiraled downward, ancient and worn, lit only by lanterns made of glass and soft golden fireflies. Laios stepped carefully, one hand tracing the moss-covered wall. Behind him, Marcille followed, her eyes scanning the runes along the stone. Senshi walked with quiet confidence, his heavy boots echoing with each step. Chilchuck moved behind them, light-footed and alert, though he looked more curious than cautious. Tonight, they were not hunting monsters. They weren't chasing treasure, or fighting dragons, or exploring the unknown in search of glory. They were following a rumor, a soft story shared in taverns and whispered by sleepy adventurers around campfires. A tale of a hidden place deep in the dungeon. A place where time slowed, where the moonlight found its way underground, where dreams were traded instead of coins. The Moonlight Market. Said to appear only when the moon was full above the world, and only when the hearts of its seekers were calm and open. It did not welcome violence. It did not answer to urgency. It revealed itself only to those who walked with peace in their steps. Laios wasn't sure if it was real, but something told him this was the right path. He couldn't explain it, not really. He just knew. The air was cooler as they descended. The stone turned from dull grey to shades of soft violet and pale blue. Strange ferns glowed faintly along the edges of the walls, waving gently in an unseen breeze. A row of fat mushrooms blinked slowly as the group passed by, their bioluminescent spots pulsing in time with some deep rhythm of the dungeon. Marcille paused beside a wall, her fingertips grazing a carving spiraling inward like a sleeping snail. "These are lullaby runes," she murmured, her voice low and full of wonder. "Elven. Very old. I could nap right here if we're stopping," Chilchuck said, stretching and yawning. "Not yet," Senshi replied, his voice calm and steady. "There is soup to find." They walked on. Time slipped away. Minutes blended into moments. It became harder to tell how far they'd traveled or how long they had walked. But none of them were in a rush. They passed a wall of crystal, humming softly with a warm note that never changed. They crossed a shallow stream, its water sparkling with drifting specks of stardust. Eventually, the stairs ended at a flat corridor. At its center hovered a single lantern, round, old, and faintly golden. It didn't flicker like fire. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Laios stepped forward and read aloud the words carved behind it. "To those who walk with quiet steps and calm hearts, welcome. As the words left his mouth, the lantern began to float forward, slowly, gently, casting a golden path before them. They followed without speaking. The deeper they walked, the warmer the air became. The silence wasn't empty, it was full of soft sounds. The fluttering of invisible wings, the echo of wind through hollow stone, the slow bubbling of distant springs. The walls of the corridor curved inward, forming a tunnel of pale blue stone. From above, silvery moths drifted down in lazy spirals, their wings leaving behind faint trails of glowing dust. Then the roof above them disappeared. It didn't collapse or open. It simply faded away. Above them stretched a sky. Not the true sky, but a reflection of one. It shimmered like glass and velvet, dotted with stars that twinkled slowly, peacefully. "It's like dreaming while you're still awake," Marcille whispered, staring upward. Ahead, the tunnel opened into a narrow stone bridge arching over a shallow river. The water glowed gently, lighting the faces of tiny pebbles beneath the surface. Each one shimmered with a soft hue, blue, lavender, and pearlescent white. Beyond the bridge hung a veil of silver vines, long and thin like ribbons, swaying without wind. And just past them, a flicker of lights, soft where warm, alive. The first signs of the Moonlight Market. A gentle breeze carried the scent of bread, lavender, and something sweet, like cinnamon and moonlight. "I think we found it," Chilchuck said softly, his voice almost reverent. They crossed the bridge, the stone cool beneath their feet. The silver vines parted like mist as they passed through, soft strands brushing their shoulders like feathers. Warm light greeted them, spilling gently across the stone floor, catching in the curve of Senshi's armor and glowing along Marcille's pale robes. Ahead of them, the Moonlight Market unfolded in soft radiance. Part forest, part village, part dream. Tents of silk and moss stretched high above stalls, made of polished driftwood and curved bone. Lanterns hung from the branches of enormous underground trees. Trees that bore no leaves, only petals of light that bloomed and shimmered in the air. No voices rose in chatter. There was no shouting of prices or loud clatter of coin. The market was hushed, wrapped in a gentle hum, like a lullaby just beneath hearing. Soft music drifted through the air. A stringed instrument played itself beneath a willow tree made of glass. Wind chimes swayed when no breeze moved. Marcille walked forward slowly, her eyes wide. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Chilchuck was already scanning the stalls, but even he seemed more curious than calculating. "It doesn't look like anything's for sale," he muttered. "At least, not with coin." They passed a table made entirely of woven vines. On it lay bowls of glowing fruit, pear-shaped things that pulsed with gentle golden light. Behind it sat a vendor, her eyes closed, her hair falling like silver dust around her shoulders. She breathed slowly, as if in meditation. Senshi stepped closer and offered a small, polite bow. "We are travelers," he said softly. "May we?" The woman opened her eyes and smiled. Just once, just enough. "You may taste," she said, "but only if you carry no hunger." Laios tilted his head. "That's backwards," he murmured. "No," Marcille said quietly. "I think I understand." She reached toward one of the fruits, but paused just before touching it. I'm not ready yet, she whispered. The group moved on. Each stall held something stranger and gentler than the last. There were soups that shimmered like liquid moonlight, served in bowls made from curled petals. There were melodies written on leaves strung like paper prayers above glowing jars. One stall offered warm stones that, when held in your palm, sang old lullabies from your childhood, no matter where you came from. A soft mist curled along the paths, lit from beneath by glowing stones embedded in the ground. Creatures walked among the market goers, foxes with curling horns, owls with fur instead of feathers, small sleepy dragons with cloud-like wings. None paid the travellers much mind. Laios stopped before a small stall shaped like a half-dome of quartz. Inside, a single item sat on a cloth, a spiral seashell the size of a fist. He leaned closer. From the shell came a whisper, not words, but the sound of waves gently washing over a warm shore. He closed his eyes. The sound deepened. He could almost feel the sun on his skin, the warmth of it, the quiet peace of being far from everything, with nothing expected of him but rest. He stepped back, blinking slowly. Chilchuck gave him a look. You good? Yeah, Laios murmured. It just reminded me of something I didn't know I missed. Marcille gave him a soft smile. Maybe that's the point of this place. In the center of the market stood a large fire pit, not blazing or harsh, but glowing softly, like a quiet sun. Around it sat creatures and people alike, sharing silence together, not eating, not speaking, just being. Senshi approached it slowly, kneeling at the edge of the stone ring. He placed both hands on his knees, closed his eyes, and breathed in deeply through his nose. This is not a place to cook, he said quietly, but it is a place to be full. Marcille turned to the others. There's magic here, but not the kind you cast. It's deeper than that. It's like the dungeon itself is resting. From somewhere nearby came the sound of water boiling gently, just enough to draw their attention. A kettle sat atop a small stone stove, and behind it, a tall figure with a face of carved wood and eyes like slow-burning embers beckoned them closer. The figure gestured to a set of cups, carved from glowing seeds. No words were spoken, just the soft clink of cup to tray, the sound of tea being poured, and the silence of waiting. Laios took one, warm in his hands. The scent was unfamiliar. Sweet, yes, but earthy too. He sipped, and for a moment, the world fell away. He stood in a field, tall grass waving around his knees. The wind was warm. There was laughter nearby, but distant, like a memory. He felt safe. He felt rested. When he opened his eyes again, the others were silent, still holding their cups. Chilchuck blinked a few times. That was real, right? No, Marcille said softly. But also yes. Senshi bowed once more to the wooden figure, who returned the gesture with a deep nod. Then, without a word, the vendor turned back to the kettle and resumed pouring tea. For who, it wasn't clear. They continued walking, their steps slow and quiet. A bridge arched over a wide pond where glowing fish flickered like lanterns drifting through ink. One leapt in a lazy arc through the air, leaving behind a trail of sparkles that drifted down like snow. On the other side, they found a small stall with a curtain of soft threads swaying gently. Inside, a low table held a series of small, intricate puzzles, each carved from smooth stone, delicate bone, and dark wood. A sign rested beside them. Solve 1 and remember a dream. Solve 2 and forget a worry. Solve 3 and lose a weight you no longer need. Chilchuck leaned over them, eyes sharp with interest. These look complicated. Marcille smiled at him. You love a challenge. He shrugged, already reaching for the first. Well, yeah, but not if it erases half my brain. I don't think it works like that, Laios said, watching curiously. Chilchuck solved the first one with ease, the pieces clicking together in his hands with soft finality. A small breeze swept past them as he finished. He blinked, his face softening. I just remembered, he said, a dream I had when I was small. I was climbing a tower made of gold thread. There were birds nesting in it, and they sang my name. I thought I'd forgotten it forever. No one spoke. They simply smiled. Chilchuck set the puzzle down, thoughtful, then left the second and third untouched. Some memories are enough, he said quietly. They wandered into a grove, where the trees curved upward like open hands. Floating above the clearing were long strands of silk, each tied with tiny charms. Bells, beads, feathers, teeth, pearls. Laios reached up and touched one. A small, clear tone rang out. Then another. Then another. The grove began to sing, low and soft and slow. Each charm joined the chorus in turn, weaving a melody that was not loud or insistent, but deep and gentle. It wound around them, not pulling, but inviting, encouraging them to stay. Marcille sat down in the moss. I don't think this is a place we can take with us, she said softly. It's something we're allowed to visit. That's all. Laios nodded slowly, his eyes drifting across the lights above them. That's enough, just knowing it exists. Chilchuck laid back in the grass. If I fall asleep here and wake up 10 years older, it'll still be worth it. Senshi, still standing, closed his eyes. We'll return, he said, but only if we walk gently. Somewhere beyond the grove of singing silk, the path began to change. It no longer followed the neat stone curves of the market. Instead, it wove gently between old roots and soft moss, guided only by the faintest glow, light rising from beneath their feet like stardust soaking through the earth. The air grew warmer, thick with the scent of spice and something slow-cooked, something sweet. It wrapped around them like a blanket fresh from the fire. Laios was the first to pause. Do you smell that? He asked, almost in a whisper. Marcille closed her eyes and breathed deeply. Cinnamon, bay leaf, a little something like ginger. Chilchuck's stomach growled, quietly, respectfully. Whatever it is, I want it. Senshi nodded once. This is the way. They followed the path a little farther, and as they turned a soft bend, a clearing opened before them. It glowed like a memory. There, at the center of the space, stood a single cooking tent. Its frame was made of old bones and driftwood, draped with silks that moved like water. Hanging from its beams were herbs, not dried but blooming. Lavender, thyme, sage, and a plant none of them recognized, with soft glowing leaves that pulsed gently with breath-like rhythm. In the middle of the tent was a stove made of smooth stone. On it, a wide pot simmered, its surface rising and falling like slow tides. Beside it stood an old cook, hooded, faceless, silent. Without words, the figure stepped aside. Senshi approached the pot, kneeling before it. He didn't lift the lid, or stir it, or speak. He simply closed his eyes and breathed deeply. "This is memory broth," he said softly. "A dish that reveals what you once loved, and still carry." Marcille tilted her head. "Will it feed us?" "In a way," Senshi replied. "But not in the way you expect." The cook gestured to the ground beside the pot, where 4 low cushions had been arranged. Laios and the others sat slowly, as though they were entering a temple. The cook raised a hand. From the stove, 4 bowls floated gently upward, each filled with steaming broth. They hovered toward the travelers and lowered themselves before them. No spoon was offered. Only the warm ceramic, the scent and the silence. Laios held his bowl in both hands. The broth shimmered softly, swirling with a color he couldn't quite name. Part gold, part green, part dream. He took a sip, and the world shifted. He stood in a familiar kitchen, lit by the glow of afternoon sun through cracked wooden shutters. A woman's voice called his name, full of warmth. His sister Falin was laughing nearby, chasing flour across the air with her hands. Their old cat blinked slowly from the windowsill. He was home. Not the dungeon, not the ruins, just home. For a moment, Laios felt everything he hadn't let himself feel in months. The ache of missing, the joy of remembrance, the comfort of knowing he once belonged somewhere soft. Then the kitchen faded, and he returned to the market. His hands still held the bowl, now lighter than before. Beside him, Marcille's eyes were damp. "I saw my grandmother," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "She taught me how to cook honey cakes with lavender. I'd forgotten the smell of her sleeves." Chilchuck let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "I was little. My dad carried me on his shoulders through a field of tall grass. I didn't know I still remembered that." Senshi took another sip, his expression unreadable, then exhaled slowly. "I walked the mountain paths, again, alone, but it didn't feel empty." The cook remained silent, but nodded once, a gesture of approval. More bowls floated toward them, smaller this time. The liquid inside sparkled faintly, like clear broth infused with moonlight. It had no scent, yet seemed impossibly familiar. "What is this?" Laios asked softly. Marcille held hers up to the light. "It looks like it's made of stars." Chilchuck drank first this time. He sat still for a long moment, then smiled. "No memories that time," he murmured. "Just quiet." Laios drank, and for a moment all thought ceased. There was no before, no after, no worry, no longing, just warmth and light, and the sense that everything, truly everything, was okay. It lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough. When they finished, the cook stepped forward again and offered each of them a bundle wrapped in soft cloth. No explanation was given, but when Laios unwrapped his, he found a small square of sweetbread folded around a thin slice of glowing fruit. Marcille's bundle held a lavender biscuit, soft and still warm. Senshi's contained a single rice ball wrapped in golden leaves. Chilchuck's was a miniature pie, crusted with salt and honey. They ate slowly, savoring every bite. The food was real, solid, nourishing. But more than that, it left them lighter, as though each bite unknotted something small but important within them. When they were done, the cook bowed deeply. "Thank you," Laios said, standing. "Even if this is a dream, thank you." The cook said nothing, but there was kindness in the stillness of their gesture. Then the tense silks began to ripple, and one by one, the herbs tied to the beams let go, drifting upward into the air and dissolving into soft trails of mist. The stove dimmed. The light of the coals faded. The meal was finished, and the memory complete. They walked on in silence, too full, body and spirit, to speak. The path led gently into a small hollow, where soft hammocks hung from trees that bent over them protectively, like giants cradling the wind. Without a word, the group paused. Marcille stepped into one and lay back, her eyes already half closed. Chilchuck curled onto a mossy ledge and pulled his hood over his face. Senshi leaned against a smooth stone, his arms crossed, breathing slow and deep. Laios sat with his back against a tree, his eyes lifting to the strange stars above. None of them were asleep. Not quite. But they were resting in the deepest sense. The kind of rest that unknots the quiet places inside you. The kind that welcomes dreams not with noise, but with stillness. A soft wind moved through the hollow. It smelled like warm tea and old books. Somewhere, a chime rang once, low and clear, then faded. The hammocks swayed softly, still cradling the memory of sleep. Morning never came in the dungeon, not the way it did above ground. But somehow, something shifted. The quiet grew lighter, the shadows softened. It wasn't morning exactly, just the next chapter. Laios stretched gently, his arms above his head, his fingers brushing leaves that hummed when touched. Marcille stirred beside him, her robes tangled in the hammock, hair glowing faintly like moonlight in water. Chilchuck blinked slowly, pulling his hood down from his eyes. "Still here?" Senshi rose first, silent as always, his movements precise. He placed a hand on the stone where he had rested, as if in thanks. The path called again, winding through the mist, quieter than breath. It did not pull, it simply waited. They followed. Soon the air began to change. It thickened, not with heat or moisture, but with something ancient, something patient. The kind of silence that comes only when something very old is listening. Marcille paused, her brow furrowed. "Do you feel that?" Chilchuck nodded slowly, "like the walls are watching." "No," Laios murmured, "like they remember." They turned one final corner, and there it was. The library. It wasn't a building, not in any usual sense. It was a tree, a single, towering tree, its trunk wider than a village, its bark etched with glowing symbols, slow-moving runes that drifted like fireflies across its surface. Branches spread high above, holding orbs of light like fruit. Between its roots were doorways, arched and spiraling, each leading inward, downward, deeper. Marcille's breath caught. "It's alive," she whispered. "Every page, every spell, breathing." Senshi stepped forward, placing one palm against the trunk. The light shifted gently as if acknowledging him. "This is not a library of power," he said quietly. "It is a library of letting go." Laios tilted his head. "What does that mean?" Marcille's voice was almost reverent. I think it's where spells go when they've been forgotten, when no one speaks them anymore. The tree opened. No door creaked, no key turned. Instead, a spiral of glowing roots drew back, revealing a staircase carved from smooth stone, descending into a soft blue glow. The travelers entered. Inside, the world dimmed, but not into darkness. The light came from everywhere and nowhere at once, pale and gentle. Shelves lined the curved walls, filled not with books, but with leaves. Each leaf was etched with a spell. They hung in the air, drifting gently, whispering to one another in voices too soft to understand. Some glowed faintly, others shimmered when you looked away. Marcille stepped forward, her fingers outstretched. The leaves parted. A single spell floated toward her. It was pale green, shaped like a maple leaf, its veins glowing gold. She held it in both hands, and as her fingertips touched it, a memory bloomed behind her eyes. I used to know this, she whispered. It was a light spell, soft and steady. I learned it before I even joined the academy. It lit my desk while I studied. I forgot I'd even forgotten it. Chilchuck leaned close. They're not powerful, huh? Not the big ones. No, she said. Just quiet ones. Gentle ones. The ones that made life a little softer. Senshi stood before a cluster of floating leaves. He took one, dark blue and folded tightly like a bud. It opened in his palm. This spell cooled soup without changing its taste, he murmured. I once saw it used in a mountain inn. Laios turned to the others. Do you think it's okay to take them? No, Marcille said gently. But I think we can remember them. That's what they want. They walked deeper. The library curved inward like a spiral shell, the air growing even quieter, heavier with thought. Here, the spells were older, fainter. Some barely shimmered. Others flickered like stars fading from view. A small creature sat on a stack of stones nearby. It looked like a moth made of ink and paper, its wings shifting with lines of forgotten script. When Laios approached, it lifted its head and blinked slowly. It did not speak, but it began to hum, a soft, slow sound, like a lullaby sung underwater. The spell leaves responded. They drifted upward, circling the group in gentle orbits, brushing against them like petals. Marcille laughed softly. It's like they remember us too. Laios reached out, and one spell settled against his chest. I think this one used to dry your boots without cracking the leather, he murmured. My father used it. He never said where he learned it. Chilchuck pulled a small spell from the air, no bigger than a coin. It glowed red and warm. This one heated tools in winter, he said. Just enough to keep your fingers working. They didn't need to speak much after that. They moved among the spells like visitors in a dream garden, brushing past forgotten words, remembering small comforts, lost names, gentle charms. No one reached for anything powerful. There were no fireballs, no shields, just soft magic, the kind that kept candles burning on long nights, the kind that warmed beds and dried tears, the kind passed from grandmother to grandchild in kitchens and fields. In the heart of the tree, they found a quiet pool. It glowed from beneath, casting the ceiling in slow waves of pale green light. The water was perfectly still. Around it, No shelves stood. Only open space and silence. A single stone sat at the center, rising just above the surface. On it lay a book. It was small and worn, bound in soft bark. No title adorned the cover. When Marcille approached, it opened by itself. The pages were blank, and then slowly words appeared, not written, but remembered. Marcille read aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. When the world is too loud, find the hush between heartbeats. When the path is too hard, walk slower and it will soften. When you've forgotten who you are, remember who you've been kind to. This is the spell of rest. It needs no casting, only remembering. The words faded again. No one moved. No one spoke. Then quietly, the moth creature flew to Marcille's shoulder and rested there. Its wings folded. It pulsed with light once, then vanished. As they turned to leave, the spells gathered once more, drifting in lazy spirals, like falling snow that never touched the ground. They did not try to follow, but their presence lingered, soft as a wish. Outside the library, the dungeon air felt lighter, not brighter, but cleaner, like a deep breath after a long cry. Chilchuck rubbed his eyes. That was surprisingly emotional. I think those spells were waiting to be remembered, Marcille said. Not used, just remembered. Senshi said nothing, but he walked slower than usual, his steps gentle. Laios turned back one last time. The great tree stood tall, its branches curling skyward like a question half asked. And for a moment, just before he turned away, he thought he saw one more spell drift upward, like a bird returning home. The path narrowed now, winding between moss-covered stones and long curtains of hanging ivy that shimmered faintly with dew. The air was quieter than ever, not silent, but deeply still, as though the very breath of the dungeon had slowed to a whisper. Laios stepped carefully, mindful of each leaf, each curl of root beneath his boots. Marcille walked beside him, her fingers gently brushing the air, still feeling the echo of the spell leaves behind them. Chilchuck had gone unusually quiet, his usual sharp eyes soft now, turned inward. Even Senshi, steady, composed, moved as if through water, calm, heavy with meaning. Ahead the ivy parted, and there it stood, a door. Not a grand portal or ornate gate, just a door. Simple, wooden, carved with tiny spirals, like vines, caught in wind. It stood alone, freestanding at the center of a circular clearing. No walls, no hinges. Just a door, waiting. The sky above, if it could still be called a sky, had dimmed to a deep indigo. Soft orbs of light floated upward like lazy lanterns, illuminating the clearing in a way that felt more like memory than sunlight. Marcille stopped a few steps away. "It's beautiful," she said, barely more than a breath. Chilchuck folded his arms, squinting. "Is this the end of the dungeon?" "No," Laios replied. "I don't think it's that kind of door." Senshi stepped closer, inspecting the wood. He placed a palm against it. "It's warm," he said. Marcille tilted her head. "Do we open it?" Laios took a breath, then exhaled slowly. "Let's sit first." They settled in a circle around the door, the earth soft beneath them like a bed of down. No one said anything for a while. They didn't need to. The journey had spoken for itself. The silence wasn't empty. It was full. Full of everything they had remembered and let go of. Full of meals shared. Magic recalled, paths walked slowly enough to notice the way the light changed through the trees. Full of rest. After a long while, Laios spoke. I used to think I wanted to reach the bottom of the dungeon, he said. To find every answer, every secret. But now... Marcille looked over at him, waiting. He smiled softly. Now I think some places exist just to be passed through. Not conquered, not solved, just experienced. Chilchuck gave a quiet laugh. That's the first sensible thing you've said. All trip. Thanks. Laios chuckled. Senshi looked toward the door again. Not all doors lead forward, he said. Some take you inward. Marcille nodded slowly. Or home. A breeze stirred the ivy. Somewhere far off, a bell rang once, low and clear. It didn't echo. It simply lingered, then faded. The door remained. Unopened, unhurried. Marcille stood. She walked to the door, but didn't touch it this time. Instead, she knelt and whispered something. No one heard what she said. It didn't matter. Then Chilchuck approached. He placed something at the foot of the door. A small stone, rounded and smooth. A keepsake. A goodbye. Senshi followed. He simply nodded once. That was enough. Laios came last. He stepped up to the door and placed a hand on the wood. For a moment, it felt like nothing happened. But then very slowly the spirals carved into its surface began to shift. Not turning, but unfolding. Like petals in slow bloom. A soft glow rose from beneath the wood. A light not meant to dazzle or blind. A light meant to comfort. The door opened, but not outward, not inward. It opened like a memory opens, wide and weightless, with no resistance. Inside there was no corridor, no chamber, just space, endless and gentle. It looked like fog, or sky, or water lit from within. It felt like sleep. Marcille touched Laios's arm. Do we go? She asked. Laios looked back at the others. No, he said softly. I don't think we need to. Chilchuck nodded. Just knowing it's there, it's enough. They stepped back together, letting the door remain open behind them. Its glow bathed the clearing in silver and gold. Above, the floating orbs began to descend. One by one, they came to rest around the group, hovering just above the ground, like stars come down to visit. Marcille sat again, crossing her legs, her eyes fixed on the sky that wasn't a sky. I think this is where the dream ends, she said quietly. Senshi looked peaceful, his back straight, his eyes closed. Chilchuck laid back in the grass, arms folded behind his head. Laios took a deep breath and let it go. Not the dream, he said. Just this part of it. Now, dreamer, you've walked with them. You've tasted memory. You've wandered through light and story and rest. And now you've reached the door. You don't need to open it. You don't need to go anywhere at all. Just sit here with us. Let the light touch your skin. Let your thoughts soften. Let yourself breathe, slow and steady. In and out. Feel the grass beneath you, the stars above you, the calm within you. There is no more to see, no more to chase, no more to carry. You are here. You are whole. You are held. Let the last of the story settle into your bones. Let it rock you gently, like a hammock. Let it soothe the edges of your heart. The door will wait. The dungeon will sleep. And you are safe.